Hello and welcome to Swift for Everyone, and this is a very special session on building an intelligent app. So let's get started with a bit of introduction. So Swift for Everyone over here is a series of community-run free Swift workshops that we host. And we've run a whole bunch of different topics, from introduction to SwiftUI all the way to different technologies. Like today, we're talking about foundation models. So I'd also like to call out that the 2026 Swift Student Challenge is now open for submissions. So if you're a student, this is one of the best opportunities for you to build a project and showcase it. You can learn more about it at developer.apple.com/swift-student-challenge. And if you're under the age of 18, you might want to also consider participating in Orchard by Hack Club. Orchard is an initiative by Hack Club to encourage more teens to participate in the Swift Student Challenge. You can submit your project and earn additional prizes by Hack Club, like pins or Apple gift cards. To learn more, you can visit orchard.hackclub.com. With that out of the way, let's get started with today's session. So as always, with every single session like this, all of the resources are available at swiftforeveryone.com/6. So I'm going to pause here for a second for you to scan that QR code. What you would see when you first open up the site is something like this. So in this Notion page, you'll see all of the resources and all of the content for today. So you can expand any of these tabs and you can see all of the information that you need. So this is going to be a super useful resource as you go about this if you need any code to copy or if you get lost at any point. So today I want to build a very simple app. The app will consist of 3 simple buttons, something like this. And these are 3 different prompts that I use to kind of get different suggestions for different gelato flavors. So for example, I have this one called Make It Adventurous, and it generates me one. And if I change it, I get a different kind of result from there. In order to build this, we have a couple of steps to get started. We're going to start out with a welcome to Xcode in Swift. So if this is your first time with Xcode in Swift, this is perfectly fine. And we're going to go through all the steps you need to get started. Then after that, we're going to look into something new, the new Playground macro. So the new Playground macro makes it really easy for you to build on top of foundation models and try out different things like different prompts and different ideas to see how it works. After that, we're going to see how you can integrate foundation models into your app. And then from there, we can try to get structured output, for example, extracting certain information from our foundation models output. And finally, we're going to see what's next after that. So let's get started. So Xcode is the integrated development environment for creating apps on all Apple platforms. And you can download it straight from the App Store if you haven't done so already. So I like to think of Xcode like a file manager. It stores all of the different files that you need for your project, and you can run your project and everything right from Xcode. And then Swift is the powerful programming language that we're going to be using today. How I like to see it is that it has a really low barrier to entry, but a really high ceiling, so you can create really anything you can dream of. And what's great about all of this is that they support all of the Apple platforms. So the same app that's written in SwiftUI for iPhone will work nicely on Mac and iPad with little to no changes. And that's really, really powerful as a developer. And one of the things that I love the most about building with Swift and SwiftUI is just how many amazing technologies exist on the platform. We've looked into several of these over the course of last year. For example, MapKit, where we built an app involving maps and location. And today, we're going to look at foundation models. Foundation models provide you direct access to Apple's on-device machine learning framework. So you can create smart, private, and intelligent workflows that exist completely without the internet. So let's get started. So if you haven't done so already, make sure that you have Xcode installed. And when you first open up Xcode, you'll see a screen like this that prompts you to install the iOS component. Make sure you choose the iOS component, and then you can let this happen in the background as we go through today. When you first create a project, make sure to select the iOS type and then choose App. There are a couple of other templates that you can use, but we can look into that during future sessions. And when we're configuring our project, we can give it a name. For example, today's project is going to be named Scoop because it's a gelato generator. And we can give it a theme. So the theme is only useful if you're running it on your actual physical device. For today, not needed at all. So we can set that to none. Organization identifier, that's only useful if you're publishing it to the App Store. For today, I'm going to use com.example. For interface, SwiftUI. Testing system, that's not needed. Storage, that's not needed as well. So let me show you what this looks like on my Mac. So I'm going to pull up Xcode over here, and I'm going to get started just by creating a new project. Over here, by default, it chooses multi-platform and app. But I want it to say iOS and app. Then I'm going to select next. And from here, I'm going to choose the product name. So in this case, the product name is Scoop. And I'm going to leave this as com.example, the interface as SwiftUI, and the language as Swift. Then I'll head down here and press Next. And then I'll save it to wherever I like. In this case, I'm going to save it straight to my desktop. Make sure to also disable Create Git repositories on your Mac. So I'm going to hit Create, and create the project from here. Now, I'm going to give you some time to create your project. So here's about 90 seconds or so, get your project up and running, get your live preview working so that you see a little iPhone screen on the side, and then you're all good. Okay, so that's about 90 seconds. So I hope you have something like this where you have your project created, and you also have your simulator over here, your live preview right here. So let's take a tour of what's in this space. So right now what we see, this is our Xcode window. We can take a look at the different parts here. So over here is our live preview. So as you make changes to your code, that is where any information, any updates will show up. Right down here by the side is our editor. So this is where we type all of our code. And then all the way at the corner here is our file navigator. So all of our files, all of our documents, all of them will live here. So you can see a couple of folders there already. If we look at the top, there are a couple more options for us. So all the way at the corner, that button helps us to show and hide the navigator. So especially if you're working on those laptops where you have less real estate, you might want to consider hiding the navigator so you have a bit more room to work with. Then after that, we have our stop execution and our run buttons. So running it allows you to run it on a physical device or a simulator. And stop execution stops it. The destination selects where on earth you want to run it. So you can say, let's say I want to run it on the simulator, or I want to run it straight on device. Okay, so now that we've set up Xcode, let's take a look at experimenting with Swift Playground. So Playground is a brand new macro that Apple introduced last year. So let's take a look. So the Playground macro allows you to run snippets of code from Xcode and immediately see the results in the canvas. And it's a really, really powerful tool. So first, in order to use Playground, I'm going to get started by creating a new file. So I can come down here and press plus and choose New Empty File. I'll name this file playground.swift. And I'm going to get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to import the Playgrounds framework. Then after that, I'm going to start by using the Playgrounds macro. What you immediately notice is that once I type the Playgrounds macro, the live preview pops up. Nothing shows up right now. That's because there's no code. But if I type in some code, for example here, if I say greeting equals to hello world, you'll immediately see the results show up here. So that is just an example of Playground. So what Playground affords for you is the fact that you can immediately preview all of your code. So as you write things, as you get any information, you can preview all of the results. And this makes it super easy and super useful if, let's say, you're doing something like prompt engineering, where you're trying out a lot of different prompts and trying to see whether the results will be better or worse. So let's see how this works in practice. So we can start by importing the Foundation Models framework. And then now, we can create a language model session. So the language model session helps us manage the session itself. And for instance, if you want to send multiple prompts or create a conversation, that's when you use the language model session even more. Now, I can start sending a prompt to get a response. So for instance, I can say, let response equals to try await session dot respond to, and then let's provide it with a prompt like, how are you? And let's print out the response. So I'm just going to give it a bit of room over here. And we can see the response right here. So it says, I'm just a program, so I don't have feelings, but I'm here and ready to help. How can I assist you today? So this is just one example. And what you notice here is that this works in just 3 lines of code. And what's remarkable is that all of this runs on device. So nothing requires the internet. This works in airplane mode on the user's device. So let's see how we can take this further. Right now, we just have a prompt over here. But prompts like this are very susceptible to prompt injection attacks. A user could give us a well-written prompt that kind of confuses the model and gets it to do something unintended. And that's where instructions come in. Instructions allow you to ask the model to follow this instead of following the prompt. So let's see how we can bring that in. So I can write an instruction here, like, let's say, you are a Singaporean uncle. Please respond with as much Singlish as possible. Okay, and we can feed that instruction straight into our model. So within the parameter over here, we can say instructions, and then we can pass in our instruction. And if we wait for the response, there we go. So that's a fairly Singlish response, and you can see how there's so much potential with instructions over here. You can use instructions to define your model's behavior and all of that. So now I'd like to invite you to play around. Play around with the different prompts and play around and see what you can come up with. So use crazy personas, see what you can build out of this. So I'm going to give you a couple of seconds, maybe about 90 seconds, to see what you can do from here. Okay, so that's been about 90 seconds. So I hope you've had some time to go and see what you can come up with from here. So, what we've done so far is we've started experimenting with Playground, and we've had a simple little example of the foundation models framework. Now, let's take a look at how we can integrate foundation models straight into our app. So let's get started over here. So taking a look at our app's interface, when we build apps, the most important first step is to break it down into smaller pieces. First, we can notice how everything is within this navigation stack. So this provides us with that standard title styling. And it provides this consistency which you see across a lot of different apps on the App Store. Next, we can notice that all of this lives within a form. So the form helps us house all of our content. And this provides us a standard way for displaying all of this information. And finally, within the forms, we have a series of buttons and texts. The buttons are some of the prompts, and text hosts the outputs. So this is what it could look like. So let me just jump into Xcode here and go into my content view. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to delete all of this code, and I'm going to replace it with a navigation stack. Right now, you'll see that nothing shows up. It's completely blank. That's perfectly natural because I haven't written any code yet. First thing, I'm going to create a form here. So this form over here, currently there's still nothing in the form, so nothing shows up. But we can actually start adding some stuff in here. So first, I'm going to start by adding a navigation title. So this navigation title is going to say Scoop, which is my app's name. And you'll see the beautiful navigation title show up right here. And we can also add some buttons. So I'm going to create a section over here and create some buttons. So my first button is going to say Make It Adventurous. And I'm going to duplicate that button for Make It Special and Make It Unexpected. Okay, finally, I want one more section that will just house a text, and this text will just be a placeholder over here. So I'm just going to say placeholder content. And that's our setup for our user interface. It's a really simple interface, and there's not really that much to it here. So now I want you to take some time to really just start customizing this. Don't just take what I have. I have Make It Adventurous, Make It Special, Make It Unexpected. But come up with something unique. Come up with something your own. Your own app could also be not even about gelato. Gelato just happened to be the first thing that came to my mind. So take some time. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to really go and explore. Now that we've created our interface, now it's time for us to bring foundation models into our app. So let's take a look here. The very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to import the foundation models framework. So I'm going to start by importing foundation models. And I'm going to start by creating a function at the bottom here called generateGelato. This function will take in a prompt, which is a string. So take note over here, you would want this function to exist within this struct, but not within this body. So Swift and SwiftUI are especially particular about your curly braces. So make sure that your curly braces are living in the correct spaces. Within the function, I'm going to create a task. So this task allows me to perform code asynchronously. Something like foundation models, where it takes some time for processing, it works best asynchronously. I'm going to write some instructions for it. So let instructions equals to maybe something like you are a gelato generator. Your purpose is to come up with creative gelato flavors based on a prompt supplied. You should not ask any questions to the user and only suggest flavors. You will return only a title, ingredients, and a description. Okay, with these instructions out of the way, now I can actually bring in what I wrote just now. So I'm just going to copy it over from our playground over here. Now within the prompt, I can supply it with a prompt from the function here. Right now, I can now call this function within these buttons. So this generate gelato function, I'll paste it within here, and I'll pass in the prompt itself. So make it adventurous. And if I test this out, and I open up my preview over here, and let's just clean up this preview canvas, and let's just click on this and see what we get. So what you see right now is that immediately once I click on it, I get the gelato flavor, a list of ingredients, and also a description that comes along with it. So I think I believe I accidentally clicked on it twice, so there are a couple of options here. But you immediately notice how easy it is to bring foundation models straight into your app. So I'm just going to finish this off by copying this a couple more times. Okay, now that we have it printed out, so it's currently only existing within our console, we'd like our user to be able to see this. So we can bring this out with a state variable. So I'm going to create a state variable up here called response content. So state variables automatically update as content changes in your app. And for this state variable, I'm just going to assign it to the response content here. In fact, I'm actually going to make this an optional string so that the value can be nil if there's no content available. Finally, I'm going to display this content over here by saying if let response content. So if response content is available, we're going to display the response content. Else, we're going to display maybe a progress view, so that it's just that loading indicator so people know that it's not ready yet. Okay, so let's see how it works. So on the preview, let's try to click Make It Special. And if we wait a moment, there we go. Here's a list of ingredients and a description for our gelato. So that's just a really quick example of what you can do from here. If this doesn't work for you right now, you might want to consider using the simulator rather than the live preview to run this. On certain versions, it might have some issues running. You might also want to make sure that you're running on the latest version of macOS and Xcode in order for all of this to work nicely. So there's a lot that you can do with foundation models here. We've just, scratched the surface with just simple, prompts and, getting different output out from there. But you can think about your own context, your own apps. What can you build from there? But to make this even more usable for us and make it, something that we can integrate right into our apps, we want to get some structured output. Currently, our output looks something like this. When we run it, we get something like this. We get a lot of information here. It's really good information, but the issue here is that it's unstructured. There's your ingredients, your title, your description, all of it is all over the place. And it's a lot of work to write code to extract all of this information. And even if we write those code, it might not be good code because it's going to be really error prone. You can't be certain that the model is going to give you the same kind of output again. And it's going to be a huge mess. That's where guided generation comes in. Guided generation lets you constrain a model's output to follow a specific structure. This allows you to make sure that the model generates responses that are predictable and easy for your app to use. So let's take a look at what this might look like. Underlying guided generation are structs. So if you're unfamiliar, what structs do is they essentially function like a blueprint for your code. So you can, let's say, group a couple of variables together, and you can say this is one struct. For instance, you might have a car, and your car struct would contain different attributes of the car, like the color, the make, the model, the number of wheels, for instance, and all of those will be attributes of your struct. And you can see how this might map into what we're doing right now with Gelato, or whatever you might end up building. So let's take a look at how we might implement for our Gelato. So the first thing I'll do is I'll create a new file here. And right now I'm just going to choose new file from template. And I'm just going to choose Swift file. And I'm going to name this file Gelato. Within this file, we're going to start by creating a struct. And we're going to call the struct Gelato. And we're going to create 3 attributes: the title, ingredients, and description. These 3 attributes will be strings, and that is our struct. So that's just a really simple example of what a struct looks like. But this is a regular struct. This is a regular Swift struct that you might be familiar with if you've done Swift before. But how we can bring this into foundation models is by making it generable. So first, I'll start by importing the foundation models framework. And now I'll add the generable macro. With that, now our foundation model framework can output a Gelato struct. But that's not enough for us. There's one more thing that we can do in order to make this even better, and that's by providing additional context for the model. So on top of each variable, we can add a guide, and this guide allows us to add descriptions and other attributes as well, like the number. For instance, if you're asking it to generate a list of items, you can say, I want 5 to 10 items generated. But in our case, a description will suffice. So I'll give it a description that says, the title is the name of the gelato flavor. The ingredients, let's ask it, ingredients needed, separated by commas. And then after that, for the description, let's just say a description of the gelato for a product page. So it gives that additional context so it knows how to generate this. Now we can bring this back into our app. So I'm just going to take this struct and head over to my content view. So right here, where it says session respond to prompt, we can say generating, and we can add the gelato type. So at this point, you might notice a couple of things go wrong, a couple of errors start going off, and that's perfectly fine. That's because we're trying to give a gelato type to a string type, which was our response content over here. So we'll convert our response content to a gelato type. And down here, we can set this to display, for instance, the gelato's title for now. Now in our live preview, we can take a look at what this might look like. If I just click on something here, when it generates, you get the gelato's title show up right here. This is just a really simple example. We've just created a couple of things here, but there's so much more that we can do. Right now, the next step that I want to do from here is I want to just style it so that it looks nicer. Now, all we have is we've just used guided generation to generate what the output might be. And we've just displayed the title to the user. So let's display, the ingredients and the description as well. So let's take a look here. So I can nest all of this in a V-stack so that they all exist together and are aligned vertically. And I'll align them to the leading edge. So that's the left side. And then I can add other things, like let's say a response content dot ingredients to get the ingredients from the response content. And I'm also going to play around with a bit of styling. So in SwiftUI, we can use modifiers to change the appearance of something. And I'm just going to add a modifier here to say, this is a headline style. And this could just be a subheadline over here. Finally, over here, I'm just going to add a description over here. And this will just be a default body text. Perfect. So if I hit any of these buttons right now, I'll see a result, and I'll see this nicely formatted version. It gives me a title. In this case, the title is Make It Special. Not a super special title in this case. But I get the ingredients list and the description. If we try something else, like we hit Make It Adventurous, now I have an even more interesting title. Now it's called Lost in the Andes. And we have this really nice gelato flavor. Actually sounds pretty nice. So that's just one example. And that's how you can really bring this to life just by using guided generation and just a little bit of work with styling. So we've just had a taste of what foundation models can do. There is so much more that you can explore with the foundation models framework. For instance, streaming content, where you can display content before all of it is ready. So this allows you to cut down on that waiting time for users, so they can start using your app and start reading some of the content all while it's still generating. Or you can think about tool calling. With tool calling, your model can call certain functions as it needs, and that can bring incredible functionality to your app. I'd also like to use this opportunity to call out some upcoming programs that you might be interested in. First of all, we have another workshop coming up, Create Fluid Experiences. And within this workshop, you're going to explore animations in Swift and how you can use it to create experiences that come to life, how you can animate between different states, and how you can create experiences that bring delight to users. I also like to call out the Swift Student Challenge 2026 once again. If you're a student, this is really one of the best opportunities for you to build an app and showcase it. I won the Swift Student Challenge back in 2020 and 2021, and honestly, it's one of the best things ever. Visit developer.apple.com/swift-student-challenge to learn more. And if you're under the age of 18, you might want to consider participating in Orchard by Hack Club. That way, you can win prizes and gifts even if you don't win the challenge. So you can get pins, Apple gift cards, and all of that kind of thing. To learn more, visit orchard.hackclub.com. And there's also an upcoming Meet with Apple session on enhancing your app with the foundation models and machine learning frameworks. And this is an amazing session happening on March 5th at the Apple Developer Center in Singapore. And what's amazing about this is that after that, you can join us in the evening for a joint meetup between our Apple developer communities in Singapore, iOS Dev Scout, and our Apple Vision Pro community in Singapore, Spatial Singapore. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to hear from amazing speakers about Swift and Apple Vision Pro, and even one on immersive media, including, a footage of rocket launchers, plane flyovers, and concerts. Really exciting stuff. The event will conclude with a Kahoot with prizes to be won, and a special commemorative pin and swag. As always, additional resources are always available on the Notion page. So if you head over to swiftforeveryone.com/6, all of the information is available over there. So if you missed anything from today, or you need to catch up on anything, they're all available right here. So thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you have a good night. Thank you.